Okay, hello and good evening again. It's getting a bit of a habit, this, isn't it? Okay, that flashing light's annoying. Right, okay. So tonight we're going to talk about part two. It's really good if this one became interactive because I can yabber on about it, but also to answer any questions would be useful as well, particularly if you're getting conflicting advice and you just want my advice on that, that's fine. Okay, so what is part two? Well, part two is your ability to drive, basically. So it's an hour-long test. It includes the following manoeuvres: turn the road, reverse around the left and right corner, emergency stop, and one of the parking exercises, either reversing behind a car or into a parking space. If your test centre doesn't have a parking spaces, it will obviously be behind a car. If they do, it could be either. But you won't get both. Okay, and I think I mentioned emergency stop, but if I didn't, I just have. And then it will cover all different types of road situations. So it would incorporate sort of housing estates. Don't know what I can't remember what they were called there. Motorways, dual carriageways, country roads, if those things are available, and normally they are, otherwise they wouldn't be test at that test centre. Motorway may not be available, but certainly a good dual carriageway network would be. As far as I'm aware, I don't know one that doesn't have either motorway or a dual carriageway network because they're not really covering what they need to cover. But I'm sure someone will pop up in a minute and tell me about one. So that's what you need to be doing. It's not just an advanced owl test. Saying that, it's very, very similar and marked in the same way. You're allowed 6 faults, but you're not allowed 7. And you will be asked 5 show me, tell me questions at the beginning, which are things like pop the bonnet and tell me how you would check the oil, tell me how you would check the water. Hi, Amanda, etc. And things like in the car, like show me how you would demist the car, show me how you would use the horn, show me how you would check the brake lights, show me how you put the fog lights on, stuff like that. Okay, and there is a list, and there's certainly a list on our site, and if you can't find it, I can certainly pop one in here. The list I would put on here is the only one I can find. It's for the learners. It's the same list, but you will be asked 5, not 2. And the difference with the learners is if they get 2 wrong, they get 1 fault. If you get 4 wrong, you fail. You get a fault for each one, and 4 out of the 5 wrong, you fail. So it's pretty important you do know them. Pretty logical stuff, but you might not be driving your own vehicle, so you might not be aware of where the demisters are or where the fog lights are. It took me blooming ages to find the fog lights on my new car. So if it's not your vehicle, it's your trainer's vehicle, for example, then make sure you cover those things and you know where they are. Particularly opening the bonnet, closing the bonnet, and that type of thing. It's very seems very simple. Simple, well, not stupid, but I certainly forgot to tell a pupil how to open the bonnet once. I did it for him, showed him, we went through whatever everything was. Didn't show him myself how to do it. Got it on test, of course. Couldn't open the bonnet, and it was all sorted. It wasn't a major issue, but it just was, it just was a bit embarrassing, really. So make sure that you're aware of all that sort of stuff. So there's also the eyesight test, and that's one that's certainly worth looking at now, even if you're just starting. Because a lot of people coming onto these are just starting out. Go and check your eyesight. You don't need to get them tested. You're looking at seeing a number plate 90 something feet, escapes me at the moment, but basically you're looking at around about 6 to 7 car lengths. So go down the road, pick 6 cars, the 7th one, read the number plate, because there's 2 parts of the test. There's a number plate check, or the eyesight test, sorry, and the driving. And if you fail the eyesight, obviously you can't do the driving. And I've never had a pupil have a problem with it, but I have seen it happen on part 2s. It's a longer distance than learners, so it's a longer distance you would have had to do to get your licence. So just make sure you don't want to rock up, pay 111 quid, and find you can't read the number plate down the road. So do just check that. I know as a trainer I sometimes forget, so I know other trainers would, and you might be doing self-training to a certain or lesser extent anyway. So just make sure you check your eyesight, because that'd be bad. Make sure you know you show me tell me questions. Make sure you're aware of the vehicle, how the bonnet opens and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so let's get on to the driving part. Remember, ask questions if you want to, etc. So the driving part is obviously the drive. They want you to drive at a high standard, and they say, Lou's put that up for me, thank you, Lou. So there you go. What that is in feet, I'm not sure, but it's about 6 car lengths. We allow sort of 5 meters for a car length, so it's about 5.5 to 6 car lengths. That's the way I do it. It's easier than getting the tape measure out, but that's about it. I think that might be the out test ones and not the part 2 ones, but I will have a look at that. And it seems a little bit short distance to me, because I think it's about 90 feet, and that's not 90 feet. But well, we'll just check it to make sure. Okay, so it's put me off now. So now the driving bit, they will say to the beginner, I want you to drive in an advanced manner. So what we mean by that really is showing that you know the rules of the road and you're not overthinking things. You're driving on a subconscious mind. The problem is you drive on a subconscious mind at the moment if you've not done your part two. What your trainer would do is bring all that into your conscious so you're aware of what you're doing, rejig the bits that aren't quite right, put it back into your subconscious. It takes a bit of practice. So no, it is part two. Okay, I'm getting my sums muddled up. That's fine. Okay, that's me putting my places. So that's your distances, around about 90 feet anyway. So that's what you you need to be able to read. Okay, so really put me off now. I really have forgotten where I am. So yeah, if I was professional, it would be quite handy, wouldn't it? Really. So no, I've lost it. I've lost the thread. So let's just start again. So the drive part, they want you to drive in a manner so you're. That's what I was talking about. The subconscious and conscious brain. So you're not. What happens is you're driving your subconscious at the moment. That has to be brought back to your conscious because you have to be aware that if you're block changing or not block changing, whether you're braking too early, too late, and reading things, and so therefore you have to be aware of what you're doing. Otherwise, you can't change stuff. So what happens is your trainer or you're watching the videos and you do it, you'll find that you're now thinking about what you're doing. But of course, our thinking brain is slower than our subconscious brain. So you'll find, basically, to cut a long story short, you'll make more mistakes than you ever did. And for the first couple of weeks after your initial training session, you'll think you can't drive. I certainly had my initial training session, was told about going down the gears, don't go down the gears, block change, and the videos tell you all about why that is rather than boring you tonight. But there are some good reasons for it. So I was practicing not going down the gears. Don't go down the gears at the roundabout. Don't go down the gears. Just keep braking, keep braking, keep braking. Change gear. Didn't see the bus. Bus driver and his 50 passengers were quite surprised. So was I. So, and I got jaw control by the trainer, which is not great. And I know us trainers quite often have to jaw control part two people. It's not because they can't drive, but now they're driving on their conscious, and that's a lot slower than subconscious. So you'll find that things will go and come and go and come. So you've got to be a bit careful, and then you'll find the new stuff will become subconscious, and you'll do it without thinking. One of the main things is whatever you're taught for the part two, is that you practice it all the time. So every time you drive, you go and practice this way. So whatever it is you're working on, whether it be handbrake neutral when you stop, whether it be not going down the gears, as I say, whether it be a steering technique, not that steering's majorly an issue, but as long as you keep control, or whatever it is you're working on, that you practice it all the time. So you practice keeping within the speed limits. You're practicing not speeding up when the speed limit changes, because most people speed up 100, 200 yards from the speed limit, that you slow down at the new speed limit and you're not still 35 when you go through the 30 sign. When you're practicing those things, when you're doing those things, practice them every time you drive. You know, so driving the kids to school, going to work, people say, oh yeah, but it takes too long. It doesn't take any longer. And that's the other thing, is to be very mindful of what's going on around you. So if you're doing 30 and a 30, and Fred behind overtakes you doing 40, and normally you'd be doing 40, you think, oh, it's all doing 40. Look at the traffic lights up the road. Look at the roundabout up the road. Look, see where they've actually got to. The chances are they haven't got any further ahead, and therefore you're not losing anything. It might feel like it, but you're not, and it's really important to buy into that. Don't take my word for it. Time it. So drive to work or wherever you go on a regular basis. Time it the way you drive now. Then time it by keeping within speed limits, not speeding up, slowing down in time, etc. And see if it actually takes any longer. And I'll be very surprised if it does. If anything, if you develop your planning skills, and you're planning better and you're judging the traffic lights better, particularly if there's two lanes. If there's two lanes, you'll find the people that speed tend to go up to the red light and stop. You can then drop into the other lane, and there's maybe lane 2, for example. You can read the traffic light, who's going, who's gone. Oh, it must be in the next, into second gear, amber, green. You're still doing 50 miles now. You go straight past them all. Filtering goes back to 1, and now you're 5 cars ahead of where you were because of good planning. Roundabouts are brilliant for that. The number of people that fly up to roundabouts and stop, when you can creep up, use second gear, for example, not nice and early, and go between the vehicles. And that's what they're wanting. They're wanting you to make progress, because you can only make progress if you plan. And when your bum's in the instructor seat, you have to be a good planner, because you have to talk people through those sort of techniques. And if you can't do them, there's a chance that you can't talk them through because you won't get your timings right. And you just need to be able to see things early. So you can give an instruction, people ignores you. Give an instruction, people ignores you. Give an instruction, people starts to do it, takes a little bit of time. Then you have to do something about it. You need time for all that. and you need to buy time, and the only way you can really buy time is, one is slowing right down, but you don't always do that. The other one is by planning well ahead and seeing things a lot earlier than you would. So one of the biggest skills on part 2 is looking away from the bonnet, looking as far up the road as you can, but you've also got to see the mid distance and the short distance. You've got to see stuff by the bonnet, otherwise you see the I don't know, road sweeper half mile up the road, but you don't see the kids cycling out the alleyway. So you've got to see it all. I tend to look a long way ahead and don't always look right where in front of me, and I know that's a weakness. That's something I'm always working on. I'll certainly time up the thing, but I'm, the kid coming out the school gate or whatever, I'm not going to say I'd miss them, but I know that can be a little weakness of seeing the things very close because I'm looking far ahead, but things do suddenly appear from the side. So you need that sort of all-round vision. We call it scanning and planning. You're looking all the way up, you're bringing it back into the car, mirrors, back out again as far up, back in, mirrors, etc. And you're keeping that scan and looking at your speedo, because one of the biggest things on part 2 is keeping within the speed limit. It's blooming hard because everyone else isn't. So we're pack animals, us humans, and we're pushed along by everybody else. So to sit there and do 30 when everyone else is right up behind you, and your kids are going, "Come on, Mum, Dad, I'm going to be late for school," and your other half's going, "Well, I've got to go to work today, not tomorrow. What's wrong with you?" It can be quite difficult, that sort of stuff going on around you, and you're also fighting yourself because you want to go faster, and that's why it's really important to self-analyse and see if actually is it any slower, or actually is it faster. If I plan well at this roundabout, this 3-lane roundabout, I can make progress. We've had some changes near us recently on our part 2 test routes, and they put some traffic lights in some major roundabouts by the motorway, and they put 2 lanes for turning left, which is brilliant. Great, you've got 2 lanes for turning left, we can crack on now. There's 3 lanes the other side, so fantastic. Went up there the other day, I counted 23 cars in lane 1, no cars in lane 2, because people don't look at the signs and road markings. So I just went up lane 2, 23 cars into second gear, round the corner, and off and gone. Not a problem. And if you didn't do that on a part 2 and you didn't take that opportunity, you would probably fail because you're not making progress. And I looked in my mirror, and about car 8 got stopped. So I would have been stopped at least 2 or 3 times before I got through those lights. But because I used the available lane, I was off. So if there's 2 lanes turning right, you'll find the majority of cars will be in the right-hand lane because they think I'm turning right lane. But lots of junctions now are putting more than 1 lane for turning to keep the flow going. But people don't use them because people don't look at the signs, they don't look at the road markings. So have a look at your area. There may be a junction you use on the way to work at the moment. They've done that with, but you've just not noticed. So if it's a right turn, don't presume it's going to be the right lane, of course, but it could be the middle lane as well, or the left lane, depending on how many lanes there are. And if it's a left turn, it could be the middle lane or the right lane that also goes left. So have a look for that, because that's a very good way of making progress without speeding. It don't have to make you feel good when someone's overtaking on the motorway doing 90, cut you up as you come off, and then you use the lane they're not using, you go past them again in front. It's much better than going fast to try and make progress. Once you get into making progress by planning and stuff, it becomes a little bit addictive really, and you really get into it, and that's really the only way to make progress in today's traffic, is to plan well. If there's any progress to be made, that's the only way to make it. Because you can get through traffic lights that you wouldn't do if you were sat in a long queue, if that makes sense. So one of the main things for the part 2 is about the planning, and when I teach for part 2, I will majority spend my time teaching the planning side of things, because that's the bit that makes a difference. If people fail or get marked down a few times, the examiner will say, develop your planning, you need to plan better. Because if you're braking late or accelerating too early, for example, that will show up planning. And as I say, planning is absolutely brilliant. I can talk about not stopping, which is sort of what I'm doing, but I'm not giving it a name. So yeah, we call it continual movement. And basically, if you can continue moving, and it doesn't mean going through red lights and killing people on roundabouts and getting these people to run off the zebra crossing. Continually moving the vehicle proves you're planning, because you can't do it unless you plan. So at roundabouts, try not to stop by using the correct lanes, by just trundling up. You think about when you teach learners. When you teach a learner, when they test you on part 2, they're going to test what you're going to teach. So if you're going up and stopping at a roundabout, and a pupil stops around, they take a lot longer to get away than you and I would, because they're inexperienced, their feet aren't working as quick, they're panicking, the car might be a little bit less powered than your car you drive at the moment, all these sorts of things. So if we go to stop at a roundabout, they need quite a big space, basically a clear roundabout, to be able to get out. Whereas if you keep moving, even at 2-3 miles an hour, you need a lot smaller space. And therefore, you're much more likely to make progress, because you're not sat there for 2 minutes waiting for a gap, because you've trundled up, you've gone into second gear or even first, you've spotted a gap that's big enough if you're moving, you go into it, you probably save yourself a minute or 2 minutes. You wouldn't save yourself a minute or 2 minutes by doing 5 miles an hour at the speed limit, because you'll get stopped by traffic lights and that sort of thing. So yeah, the one way to practice your planning is continual movement. See if you can keep moving at traffic lights, roundabouts, all that sort of stuff. The other way to check is motorways and dual carriageways is to stick at 70 miles an hour and not go below or above it, and that shows good planning. Because if you end up going below it, you've not got out early enough for the lorry going up the hill, for example, or just the lorry. They can do 60 now, but you still get stuck behind them. If you end up having to speed up because you've got someone up behind you flashing their lights and getting annoyed because you're doing the speed limit, again, you haven't planned it well enough to come in, see them coming up fast behind, go in. As they come past you, come out. You've not been held up, and you've not held them up. So the continual speed limit is quite a good thing as well, the 50, the 70, whatever it happens to be. If you can keep at that speed, and if you've got cruise control in your car, you'd be expected to use it on a Part 2, which is interesting. I only ever had it once. I had it a few weeks ago with a guy who works for the ambulance service as a trainer, and he had to use Part 2. And he took an ambulance car and it had everything in it, of course, including the blue lights and everything. She wouldn't let him use them. I don't know why that was, but that was a bit boring if you ask me. But anyway, you put the cruise control on, absolutely fine. If you don't use it, you can fail for it. So if you've got cruise control, stick it on and see if you can not knock it off, because that really will help your planning. So seeing that lorry early, is it going up a hill, therefore I'm going to need to get out early? Is it really busy? It's really busy, I'm going to need to get out early. If it's not so busy, I can be a bit later. And what it does, it develops your all-round observation, your all-round planning skills, and that's the thing they're looking for. So if you go past near a slip road, don't come back in at that point. Wait for the slip road. If you go past one coming off, wait for the one coming on before you come back in, because otherwise you're going to probably have to end up coming back out again. Not using a brake on dual carriageway or motorway unless emergency, because you should be able to plan with the gas. Absolutely. You shouldn't be slowing down on the motorway or dual carriageway unless obviously there was a queue of traffic. You should be coming out by the slip roads, like I'm saying, before you have to slow down because someone's coming out at 2 miles an hour. And you're just planning it, or you're seeing that lorry up there, you're judging that car that's going to come off at the last moment to go up the slip road, so you might want to get in lane 2, because if they come across, they're not going to affect you because they're probably in lane 2 themselves. But a trainer would go through those things a lot more with you. Tonight it's not about telling you everything, but it's giving you some ideas to gauge yourself, because being able to analyse how you're doing is really important. And don't be afraid to video yourself. You'll hear me talk about this a lot, Part 2, Part 3, etc. Video yourself, video out the front, video you, do both maybe, 2 phones or whatever. You can get dual camera systems now pretty cheap off eBay. And just see what you're doing. See if, I had to slow down, I could have worked that out, I could have carried on there. As Lou's saying, if you brake, ask yourself, were you being reactive or proactive? Chances are you're being reactive. Yeah, absolutely. And most drivers drive on their brakes, don't you? You see it all the time. I see it on a motorway all the time, car in front braking, invariably because they're too close. And if you're too close, every time the car in front farts, you have to slow down. Excuse me, but that's just the way it is. And then the car behind you has to slow down a bit more, car behind a bit more, and it's about 50 cars and you've got stationary traffic. Keep that gap, 2-second rule in good dry conditions. You won't have to brake, you just ease off the power slightly, unless they're braking really hard. But even then you can anticipate that. You can see 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 cars ahead on a motorway most of the time. If car 30 is braking, I'm just easing off slightly, seeing why they're braking. If they're just braking because they're too close to car in front, it probably won't affect me, but I'm ahead of the game. And if I think it's going to slow me down, the other lane's still going, I'll change lanes nice and early. When you're practicing, when you've practiced on a 2-lane dual carriageway or motorway, be very aware that you will get people coming up behind you wanting you to get out of the way because you're doing 17 to 70, and that's just against the law. So you have to be very aware. And I like training people on 2-lane dual carriageways and motorways, because you really have to plan better there. Because on a 3-lane motorway, or dual carriageway, and you're overtaking a lorry, as long as you're making progress on that lorry, you're catching up, you're deemed to be overtaking, other people can use lane 3. Of course, in a 2-lane situation, they can't. So it does mean a bit more in or out. But you don't want to go in when you get stuck, so you want to be coming in early enough to allow the vehicle that's right up behind you to go past and come out before you have to slow down for the lorry. Take some planning. What most people do is wait till they're right behind the lorry, come in, and now you'll stop behind the lorry doing 60 miles an hour, no other bugger will let you out. So it's really good practice. If you've got 2-lane motorways or dual carriageways near you, really good way to make continual progress. If you, on dual carriageways, a 70 mile an hour limit, you'll learn that on your theory, because most people, if you go down the pub later and you ask your mates or your people in your lounge now what the speed limit on dual carriageway, most will get it wrong. I always ask this question on the first session or two. Most people get it wrong. Even I've had police drivers get it wrong. 70 on a dual carriageway, and a dual carriageway doesn't have to be 2 lanes. It's dual carriageways, not dual lanes, and just some sort of barrier that isn't tarmac. So it could be literally a little grass strip that wide, up to a massive wall they're putting on motorways now, so you can't see the other carriageway. Everything in between. It could be, there could be. Where we're going in near Scotland, there's a motorway where there's a farm between the 2 carriageways, an actual proper farmhouse and everything. So it can be anything from a little bit of grass to a village, really. But the lanes don't count. The lanes are irrelevant. The most common failure on a Part 2 isn't what people would think. It's not the manoeuvres. It's not the mirrors. It's the making progress. People don't like doing 70 in a 70. People don't like doing 70 on a dual carriageway. I don't know why, whether it's just people that come into this industry, I don't know, but it's the biggest thing I struggle with as a trainer is getting people to make progress and do speed. And I had one fail the other day on a dual carriageway, was doing 60, got overtaken, end of, failed. If someone overtakes you and you're not doing the speed limit, when it's achievable, of course, their argument is, well, they did it, they didn't crash, you should have been doing it. Country roads is the other one. Learn how to read limit points. I know there's a limit to limit points, as it were. But you need to be making progress on those country roads. We know there's a lot of that are 60 that just aren't achievable, but there's a lot that 60 is achievable as well. So just make sure you're aware of that and you're making that progress. The analogy I use is basically that you're being, it's a bit weird this one, but it's the way it is. You're being followed by the police, but you're bursting for the toilet. You're going to get on with it because you're absolutely bursting up. Or there's a kid in the back saying it's going to be sick or something like that. You get the picture, don't you? But you've got a policeman behind you, so you can't break any laws. It's really good to have that in your head all the time. If it's 30, do 30 if it's appropriate. If it's 40, do 40 if it's appropriate, etc. The biggest failure is not making the progress because people tend to think, oh, learner, I've got to drive like a learner, I've got to drive slow. Well, learners won't pass if they drive slow either. It's changed from possibly when you did yours that they've got to show they're a driver. Because once they get the license, they clearly are. They're legally a driver now. So it's important they drive as a driver on their test and not as a learner. So if they drive like a learner, they're going to be a learner. You definitely don't want to drive like a learner, which is why they say at the beginning, we expect a high level of competence. In other words, get the frig on with it. Do your manoeuvres. Don't do them at snail pace. If you can do a turn the road reasonably efficiently or reverse around the corner, it's me fiddling, dropping my pen, etc., with good observations and the ability not to miss anything, it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be really, 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 really slow. It doesn't have to be really fast either. But if you're parallel parking in a high street, you don't want to take ages over it because you're going to hold the whole place up, aren't you? So it's about that. I think the last thing I want to mention is this is just a quick overview, really, just to give you the opportunity to ask questions and things. And the last one is basically, I've forgotten, is no, I have forgotten actually. I'll come back to it. I can put it on later if I do remember. It's not crucial. So it's about learning what's required in the essential skills. If you're on the site, on the new site, you'll see that we've linked the essential skills into the driving, and then there's demonstrations of the driving. Link it all together. If you're getting conflicting information from a trainer that's saying, oh, every time you stop at a traffic light, you have to put handbrake neutral. Well, have a look at the essential skills. It doesn't mention it, so you don't have to do it. You can do it. Absolutely, you can do it if you want to. You can do whatever you want as long as it works, and that's the crux of it. It doesn't really matter what you do as long as it works. They used to have a real thing about handbrake neutral. I spoke to my SE, he says, I don't care as long as the car doesn't roll. Fair enough. Okay. So don't get too bogged down with little bits of detail. A lot of people will tell you you've got to do this and that, and you've got to hold the wheel, and you've got to do this and all that. It's not true. As long as steering's not even in the essential skills anymore. There used to be lots of pictures of it, it's not even there. So it's about driving as the essential skills want you to drive, and the essential skills, when you read it, is quite woolly, and that's a good thing because that gives you a lot of areas that you can deal with and that you can put your own interpretation on, really. And they will pull you over lots of times, so make sure you are aware of how to pull away. Make sure that you're doing that right shoulder check when you pull away. And I had someone mark down the other day for not pulling up near enough to the curb, because they are bringing in laws about distance parking from curbs. I think it's already in. So they want you to park, make sure you're not touching the curb or scraping it, but you want to be getting yourself reasonably close to the curb when you pull up. No pulling up next to driveways, WO lines, unless you're doing the angled start, and they will hopefully make it reasonably clear that you can go across the driveway. Doing a manoeuvre, again, you can go across the driveway. I don't mean into their garden, but I mean, so it's on your side, because it's not feasible to do it otherwise. Okay, so just going to round it up now. So if there's any questions, please ask them now. But you can always ask the questions underneath later on, and me or Louise will answer them at some point. Hopefully, as soon as we can. So practice. The main things are make progress. Get on with it. Try not to stop. Try not to use the brakes if you can help it, because it's a good sign of making progress. Try to keep a continual speed, because that's again another good way of gauging whether you're keeping progress, whether you're planning, etc. Because if you're up and down with your time, there's something wrong with your planning. And yeah, just practice. Just make sure you're practicing. Make sure you're critiquing what you're doing. Be self-conscious. Be aware of what you're doing, because it really has to become a subconscious skill. And to become a subconscious skill, in other words, you're not thinking about it, it takes quite a lot of practice. So you might not need many sessions with the trainer. My average is 4 to 5 2-hour sessions with a trainee. But you are looking at, 40, 50, 100, 200 hours practice, which sounds a lot, but actually, if you drive for a living, you could get 20 hours, 30 hours in a week quite easily. And if you're taking the kids to school and back, and then ballying and back, and then you end up probably 10 or 15 hours a week driving the car anyway. That's why you must drive in the way you're expected to drive, because if you try and turn it on, for example, for your trainer, or for the test itself, you will fall over, because your subconscious and conscious brain, it will just go very badly wrong. So you've got to have I've said in other videos, this is one of the times you've got to have backing from your family, that they're happy for you to do what you need to do. They will perceive it slower. It isn't. There's been lots of scientific studies on this. It's not slow, and you can prove it to yourself, like I said earlier, but they've got to buy into it. Otherwise, they're going to be pushing you to do stuff you shouldn't do, and that's going to be quite counterproductive. Okay, so there's no questions coming in, so hopefully that's been useful. I've forgotten a couple of bits. If I come back to them, I don't think they're crucial. If I come back to them, I'll certainly make a quick video. I'll stick them underneath anyway. But at least you see that this is live and not staged, and not loads of notes and all that sort of stuff. Okay, so hopefully it's been useful to you, and says thanks for the refresh. Good, you're welcome. Don't worry about it really. If you can drive, you can drive. Just make sure you know the bits that you need to know really, and not being funny if it's all on the site really, or what you need to practice. But buddying is a good thing as well. But I'm going to do a video probably next week, a live chat about buddying, and this is where you would start buddying with someone and going out to practice with each other, because they're on your side. They can want you to do the right thing, unlike sometimes family aren't. So it can be a very useful tool, but I will talk about that another time. So the next one will be Friday now. I think I just need to confirm that with the diary, because I know I can't do tomorrow, because we're going to talk to some local people that want to train as instructors. So on Friday, be back again, and we'll do some part 3, just an overall part 3, and then next week I'm going to do more detailed ones of phase 1 and phase 2, and also buddying. And then we'll probably follow, because this has been very popular, we'll follow that with some advice on, if you're a trainer, how to help people train and practice and all that type of stuff. And particularly if you're not really a trainer, but you're doing it for husband, wife, daughter, son, there's a lot of that going on at the moment. I'd like to do a live chat on that and help you guys out. Just some things coming in. If, for example, I'm approaching a roundabout, anticipating good time and slowing down an approach, how do you find the fine line between making, it doesn't show me the rest, I'm afraid, but presume making progress and something else. But I know what you mean. There's practice. You have to, if you're going to be able to time it right and not slow the other car down and not end up braking late because you've misjudged it, is practice. And don't go for fine lines. Don't be squeezing between two vans or whatever. Make sure that you can see as well, because someone on part 3-2 the other day went out at the same time as the van, and the van got away a bit quicker than he did. The examiner said, you were lucky there was nothing coming around, because I'd have failed you. So don't use other vehicles as blockers. And one of my rules is don't get next to other vehicles on roundabouts anyway, because people tend to get in them, and they tend to swap and chop, don't they? And if you're not next to them, they can't hit you. But yeah, it's practice. I can see exactly, because I can't read it all, unfortunately. It only shows the first 4 lines. I'm pretty happy. I know what you're alluding to. So it is just practice, because it's not an easy thing to do, which is why it's quite impressive when you can do it. And that's where these 50, 100, 200 hours practice come in, because it takes a bit of practice to do it. And it's quite useful not going down the gears, because it gives you more time to plan that roundabout. What I would say is don't just look to the right. A lot of people on roundabouts just look to the right, so look ahead. If you've got a car ahead, coming straight on, they're going to stop the cars to the right. That gives you a space. Look for what we call your blockers, and you'll find suddenly spaces open up. What they do is they don't open up anymore, they open up earlier. So you see the space in second to maybe 2 seconds before you would have done before. That then becomes an opportunity that wouldn't have been there before. So you suddenly get more opportunities. Actually, you don't. You just see them earlier. Therefore, they become opportunities. So seeing the car on your left indicating right, when he gets to about 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock, the car on your right will pause. You know why he's paused, you can go. Whereas normally you'd wait to see why he's paused. Now that car comes around and you've missed the opportunity. So it's planning it more. The examiners will be aware of it. A lot of people worry the examiners thinking, oh, I'm taking chances. No, you're not. You're not taking chances. You're taking judgment. You're doing an advanced driving test, which is why at the beginning they say, we want you to drive in an advanced manner or words to that effect, because they want you to do that sort of thing. So they may sometimes the learners do it. They're a little bit surprised, but then they settle down because they see it's not a fluke and they're not taking a risk. But of course, there's a fine line between a risk and a judgment, and that just takes a little bit of work. But to begin with, we'll never take any risks, but build up that judgment. You don't want to be going out, oh, I'm going to try this, keep moving, and then get a bus during an emergency stop and 50 people roll off their seat. Not that I would do that, of course, no. So yeah, be careful with it, but play with it, build it up. But it is practice. Okay, so any more for any more? Okay, so I'm going to leave it there, but feel free to ask any questions, and when I come off of here, Sarah, I'll be able to read the whole question. And if it's not what I thought it was, I will type an answer, of course. But it only shows me when I'm live the first 4 lines, which is a bit of a pain. But hopefully that's answered that. So we're always contactable, certainly on the thread. Just ask questions and we will get back to you. Hopefully that was useful. Thank you.